Many years ago as a teenager, briefly involved with another political party, main political party, but I left because after 6 months, because I got tired already of the corruption that was in it. Dropped out completely for about 10 to 15 years because I was completely disillusioned over the whole political situation. Eventually got drawn back into the political scene because of Crumlin Hospital. I have a daughter that attends there with a spinal condition, and started with a few other people there, a group trying to basically save services through that. From there, in space of a year or two, I went looking then for something to continue on in that light, politically wise, trying to make a bit of a difference. And for a brief time I spent time in Direct Democracy Ireland.
Okay.
Now, I left that after about a year and a half because of a number of situations that were going on internally that I wasn't happy with, and I wanted to cover also a number of other topics which they weren't specifying or actually delving into themselves.
Okay.
But there was I basically saw a broader picture out there that needed to be addressed.
Okay.
I then worked on United People, one word, and I talked to other people that were also politically interested in starting up something new, fresh, that's away from nepotism, cronyism, completely fresh, clean people that were unattached to what the shenanigans of the past. And that's where United People was born then,
Okay.
basically.
And United People is a political party, is it?
It is. It was registered in the Dáil in August. Now, United People had been going basically since January, February, but it took a good few months to get the process going to actually
January,
register.
February of 2015.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
2015.
Okay.
And in that time then we managed to build up our membership numbers right across the country.
Okay.
Now it's just under around about 450, 500 at the moment before we even go public.
Right.
And we're having a national launch on the 7th of January up in Dublin.
And so what does United People stand for?
Honestly, first of all, it's based on a system called participatory democracy, where the public is able to get more active on a lot more regular basis. What United People stands for is accountability, a lot more faster, and the politicians themselves on a national and local level are more accountable to the people, more quicker. We're talking about a country that, any country basically in Europe or in the world, that you can move millions or billions in the space of minutes or hours. Decisions made over 5 years can have a long-term effect over the space of a person's lifetime. Yeah, our politicians are only, under the standard practice, are only basically accountable once every 5 years by an election that's called. The way things are going speed-wise in the world, once every 5 years, quite honestly, now is not good enough because we've seen too much political damage. Ireland has gone through now in the last 2 decades alone 2 roller coasters of boom to bust, boom to bust. The politicians and the political system itself has to be more accountable, a lot quicker now.
And how would you make that system more accountable?
Yeah, myself and a good few others have signed up to a thing called 1YI, which can be found on www.1yi.ie. It's the system of participatory democracy that also incorporates the ability to bring public referendum forward to the people on a more regular basis. That alone would ensure that the people are able to expose more what needs to be done, expose more what the politicians are trying to hide, and expose more what the people want done next month, next year, not in the next, after the next general election, which could be 4 to 5 years away again. It means that our politicians will be more accountable on a more regular basis per month, per year, again, than every 5 years. There is a number of governments around the world incorporating that system into their system of politics, so we'd like to try and do similar. It was under the 1919 and the 1922 Constitution, 1921 Constitution, but it was watered down, and even when it was written at that stage, they had the government had put in loopholes as such in order that it couldn't really be of much use. But we still stand by the idea of the system, and we'd still like to see it reintroduced in today's form of legislation, better written, so the public could use it more.
Okay, so what do you see as the main issues facing the voters in Louth in the upcoming election?
In Louth in particular, we have a couple of one of them is the Louth Hospital and the County Louth Lourdes Hospital, where the Lourdes Hospital in particular has been constantly at the top of the list in the country of the highest number of stretchers per night, per week, every year. That's number one that has to be solved. The second one after that has to be the crime problem that we have. Louth itself has had a drop of 35 Gardaí in the last couple of years that have, so the resources, not just in Drogheda but further out afield towards Dundalk, etc., have been very stretched, and especially around the border areas. There has been constantly trouble, and sadly the unfortunate deaths of Gardaí over the last few years has possibly an indication of that as well, of the Garda cuts that has happened. They need more resources. We were supposed to have, not just in Louth, but I mentioned Dublin as well, the introduction of a computer system that would, an information system that would help the Gardaí to gather data resources on a local level and combine it with a national level, so they could actually help improve detection rates. And that was dropped by the government as well in their austerity cuts and measures. So the second one, as I was saying, would be the crime. The third one in Louth, as well as the rest of Ireland, again was going back to the one that everybody's been talking about, and the one which Fine Gael and Labour are trying to avoid talking about, is the water issue, Irish water, the use of meters, and the charge that comes from all that. So they would be the main three to start off with.
Right.
But having said that, my own organisation, which I started up, has 57 issues that we wish to try and raise with the government.
And of those 57, what would you say is the key issue?
Key accountability of the government, of any particular government, not of this particular one.
Now, I'd say to that over the last 20 years, maybe even longer, we've had lots of political parties and people saying that they were going to bring about accountability and transparency, and none of it arrived really, based on what we've seen in recent tribunals. So what would be different about you guys?
Okay, well, for a start, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have been banging on about it for the last 2 decades. Well, we're all going to try and be different. When Enda Kenny stood in the Dáil on his first day of Taoiseach in 2011, he at 2:05, he stood up and said that his only policy is the truth. I think his words were, honesty is not the only policy they have. It is the policy they have. Where the others have been waffling on about trying to do it, they've window dressed about it. We can boil it down to brass tacks. We know what needs to be done in actual procedures, day to day. We know what legislation needs to be brought in.
And what is that?
It, again, to waffle on about it, it's the participatory democracy system. I've had meetings with the Swiss government in the last couple of years and with the Swiss ambassador, and he's given me some help and assistance in that, and he's given me the legislation that's needed to help instigate it, the structures that are needed at a local and national level. Now, again, this is Ireland, so it can't be exactly the same, but along the same lines it can be tweaked so it can work within Irish society. The actual boring legislation part of it is what we have in hand. The other political parties are all saying, oh yes, we'll do this and we'll do that, and they've put it on the long finger, and then they eventually kick it down the can. It's dropped after 6 months of an election period, and you never hear any more about it. When something happens in the press or something blows up, oh, we'll do something about that, yeah, and 2-3 weeks later, we're back to normal again. The subject is dropped. So now the issue now is out there. There's a number of parties besides ourselves, UnitedPeople. There's the Irish Democratic Party, there is the National Citizens Movement, there's another one called Fish Nua. There's a few of them out there, and they've all cottoned on to the notion that this needs to be sorted out. Not maybe in the next 6 months, but definitely in the next election term. Again, the other parties might have their own issues. They might be seen as extreme left, they might be seen as extreme right. The only way people can decide for a good party to be voted on is if the party gives them full and frank information. A lot of parties aren't doing that. What they're giving them is sound bites. What UnitedPeople hopes to do, or what it aims to do, is give them more than that. And when after our national launch on the 7th of January, they'll see that in detail, because our actual manifesto, the full manifesto, is over 100 pages in detail. Whereas the normal party manifestos that you get at the moment is about 30 to 15 pages if you're lucky.
What sort of response have you been getting from the people in Louth?
Very good, honestly. when you go round, I ran in the last by-elections about 2 years back, and when I knocked on doors and eventually, they saw that I wasn't from the usual mainstream parties out, they welcomed me more in. So then when I ran through the front doors and sat down on the living rooms, they discovered, well, there is a system out there that can hold the politicians accountable, hold the policies accountable just as much. It's just as much as important. And they asked, well, why can't we have that now? We said the same thing to them back. And they said, that, well, I mean, we want it. Why can't we have it? And we said, well, the others have been dodging the bullet. So we're trying to bring that now peaceful issue to the Dáil and trying to make it happen. So in County Louth, when people have heard that from ourselves, they said they wish us luck. Again, they told us, we might be willing to more listen to you when we hear more, and we said that's fair enough.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, all right. Okay, and obviously coming up next year is 2016.
Mm-hmm.
The big issue, or what's going to be in a lot of people's minds next year, is the centenary year. How do you think that should be remembered in County Louth?
Well, the 1916 rising should be happening on a more personal level. Everybody, to a certain extent in the Dáil, is talking about big, massive celebrations, but at the end of the day, it's real lives that made a difference. I have one of my own relatives died in Drogheda up at the Cup and Saucer over the issue, which, to our honour, he was fighting on, for in Ireland that could help self-govern itself. So it's really about the people themselves, rather than just more so a party, a reason to celebrate. They should remember the individual people that's behind it and what made the difference.
And then, when you go before the people and they want to know a little bit more about you, saying your track record in public life, what would you be able to say to that?
My own track record, after being 20 years a barman, is that I went from one brief period in a political party that I didn't like because of the corruption that was in it. I then went into another, wanted to expand on that, and with UnitedPeople then I then went forward. I've been involved in a number of things, from issues about trying to save green land, trying to save the forests, trying to save Crumlin Hospital Services. On the local front, again, one or two of those issues applied. I then worked with the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre. I worked with a number of organisations. Last year I was going around delivering food parcels. Here, the year before that, I was helping out in the local soup kitchen. This year, unfortunately, I can't do it because of a newborn child, which you'll see here behind me, so that has had my hands tied up. But I've been constantly banging away out there, trying to just make my own bit of difference, not just for myself but for my children, because they too have to live in this country, and they're going to inherit anything that we do, be it good or bad.